Having a high IQ sounds impressive until you actually have to live inside one. You can forget someone's name in 5 seconds, but still remember the tension in their voice from 3 months ago. You can look calm in a crisis, while your brain is quietly running emergency simulations in the background. You can sit in a normal room with normal people, having a normal conversation, and still feel like your mind has too many open tabs. So no, this is not about being superior. It is about why normal life can feel strangely heavy to a mind that processes more than the room asked for. And the strange part is, this usually does not show up during some dramatic life crisis. It shows up in a meeting where everyone nods at an answer that makes no sense. It shows up when someone says, "That's just how it is," and everyone moves on. It shows up at a family dinner where the safest topics are the only ones allowed to survive. It shows up in a group conversation where people agree too quickly, laugh at the right moments, and quietly avoid the uncomfortable questions sitting in the middle of the room. Because normal life is not neutral. Normal life is built on surface agreement. Most of the time, people are not trying to analyze every contradiction, every emotional signal, every hidden cost, every pattern under the pattern. They are trying to get through the day. And honestly, society needs some of that. It needs quick answers, safe topics, polite scripts, the ability to say, "Don't overthink it," and keep moving. But a high IQ mind does not always move that smoothly across the surface. It sees the gap, the flaw, the missing piece, the thing no one is saying. Sometimes normal life feels hard because it asks you to stay shallower than your mind naturally goes. And the first place this shows up is not in an IQ test. It is in a room full of people having a normal conversation, because in a normal conversation, most people are only following the words. But you are following everything around the words, the tone, the timing, the facial expression that changed for half a second, the silence after someone said they were fine, the room tension no one has named yet. Who is performing? Who is getting impatient? Who is pretending to agree? Who just shifted their energy the moment a certain person walked in? So when people say, "Why are you so quiet?" they may not realize how much is already happening inside you. You are not just sitting there. You are decoding. A party, a meeting, a networking event, even a simple group dinner can start to feel like a field of signals. And your mind keeps picking them up, whether you asked it to or not. You came for one normal conversation, and somehow your brain started analyzing power dynamics near the snack table. That is why social life can burn through your bandwidth so fast. From the outside, you may look detached, awkward, antisocial, or hard to reach. But from the inside, the room is not empty. It is overloaded. You are tracking words, emotions, motives, patterns, and tiny inconsistencies all at once. So maybe you are not tired of people, maybe you are tired of processing people. And once you understand that, your need to step outside, go quiet, or disappear for a while starts to look less like rejection and more like recovery. Then comes the other problem. Sometimes the room is too full of signals, and sometimes the conversation is too empty. Someone asks, "How are you?" And for half a second, your mind freezes, because fine feels fake. But the real answer would take 20 minutes, 3 emotional footnotes, and probably make the whole room uncomfortable. So you say fine, they say good. And now both of you are trapped inside a social script no one really wants to read. But to be fair, small talk is not stupid. It has a function. It is social glue. It tells people, "I am friendly, I am safe, we are okay here." It helps strangers warm up before they become real people to each other. The problem is, for a high IQ mind, glue cannot be the whole meal. If the conversation stays on weather, weekend plans, work cliches, and polite nothingness for too long, it starts to feel like mental static. Not painful exactly, just draining. Because your mind is looking for pattern, meaning honesty, a real question, something with weight. This does not mean you are cold, and it does not mean you are trying to be superior. You are not waiting for people to impress you. You are waiting for the conversation to become real. Small talk is not meaningless to society. It is just not enough oxygen for a mind that needs depth. But the struggle gets heavier when the issue is not conversation anymore. It is truth. Someone says, "That is just how it works," and everyone else seems satisfied. The meeting moves on. The family changes the subject. The group accepts the answer because it sounds clean enough to survive the moment. But your mind does not stop there. It asks, why does it work that way? What caused it? What is missing? What would change if one variable were different? Who benefits if no one asks another question? Why did everyone accept that so quickly? This is where people start calling you an overthinker. And sometimes, to be honest, they may be right. Not every form of overthinking is intelligence. Some of it is anxiety. Some of it is fear trying to protect itself by rehearsing every possible disaster. But there is another kind. A kind that comes from a mind that cannot rest when an explanation is incomplete. A simple answer does not calm you down if your mind can still see the missing pieces. It is not always about wanting to argue. It is about coherence. Your brain wants the parts to connect. It wants the story underneath the story. It wants the reason behind the reason, the why behind the why. An unfinished truth can feel physically uncomfortable to a mind built for depth. This is useful when the world needs better questions, but it is exhausting in a world that often rewards fast closure, because normal life does not always want the deeper answer. Sometimes it just wants everyone to nod and move on. And this is where normal life starts calling you difficult. You see it at work. You see it in families. You see it in schools, offices, churches, friend groups, and every place where people repeat a sentence long enough that it starts to sound like truth. This is how we do it here. Don't make it complicated. Just follow the process. That's the rule. It may be a report no one reads anymore, a family rule no one can explain, a company process that survives only because questioning it would make the room uncomfortable. For many people, rules are comforting. They reduce uncertainty. They make life feel manageable. They save everyone from reopening the same questions again and again. And there is nothing wrong with needing structure. The problem is, a high IQ mind often does not experience a rule as comfort. It experiences it as a claim that needs to be tested. Does it work? Who made it? Is it logical? Is it still useful? Is this tradition, or is this truth wearing an old uniform? You are not always trying to argue. You are not always trying to be rebellious. Sometimes your mind simply cannot ignore a process that no longer makes sense. But that question can disturb people more than you expect, because you are not only challenging the rule, you are challenging the comfort the rule gives them. Some people use rules to stop thinking. A high IQ mind starts thinking the moment a rule does not make sense. And this is where you may get labeled difficult. Not because you were rude, not because you were wrong, but because your question interrupted the comfort of not having to question. Normal life is not only made of tasks, it is made of unspoken agreements, not to question too much. And if your mind cannot sign that agreement, people may punish you for noticing too early. Then there is the way you handle effort. From the outside, it can look confusing. You may not jump into every project. You may not get excited about every goal. You may delay, withdraw, or seem strangely unmoved by things everyone else treats as urgent. And people may call you lazy, passive, unmotivated. But it is not always that simple. Of course, high IQ people can be lazy too. Everyone can. Intelligence does not magically remove avoidance, fatigue, or bad habits. But there is a specific kind of resistance that has nothing to do with weakness. It happens when your mind looks at a task and quietly calculates the cost. Is this worth the energy? Is the outcome real? Is this progress or just movement? Is there leverage here? Is this problem worth the life it will take? Normal life often rewards visible productivity. Busy calendars, fast replies, constant motion, looking useful even when the work itself is not. But a high IQ mind can struggle to perform enthusiasm for busy work that feels pointless, inefficient, or dishonest. You do not resist effort, you resist wasted effort. Sometimes what looks like laziness is a mind quietly asking whether the problem is worth the life it will cost. And that can be hard to explain. But the hardest thing to explain is not your effort, it is your emotional timing. Because in conflict, people expect emotion to look a certain way. They expect a fast reaction, a raised voice, a visible expression, a clear sign that you care. So when a crisis happens, a tense meeting, a family argument, an unexpected problem, someone suddenly getting loud and you go quiet, people may read that silence the wrong way. They may think you are cold, detached, uncaring. But inside, your mind may be moving faster than anyone in the room can see. You are running possible outcomes, measuring emotional risk, predicting what will happen if you say the wrong thing too soon, looking for the sentence that solves the problem without creating 3 new ones. By the time you respond, your brain may have run 3 disaster scenarios, 2 exit plans, and 1 joke it wisely decides not to say. That quiet is not emptiness. It is processing before reacting. And for some high IQ people, that delay is not emotional absence. It is emotional control. You are trying to organize chaos before you let it come out of your mouth. But normal life often trusts what it can see. So, if your care does not look dramatic, people may assume it is not there. If your concern comes out measured, they may call it distance. If your face stays calm while your mind is working, they may call it cold. But your calm is not emptiness, it is compression. And this is where the real cost appears. Not in how your mind works, but in how people name what they cannot see. And maybe that is the real cost. Not the intelligence itself, not the depth, not the questions. The real cost is being constantly misread by people who only see the outside behavior, never the inside processing. They saw your silence and called it arrogance. They saw your need for space and called it antisocial. They saw your questions and called them resistance. They saw your selectivity and called it laziness. They saw your calm and called it coldness. They saw your depth and called it overthinking. They saw your hesitation and called it weakness. They saw you change your mind when new information arrived and called it inconsistency. But they did not see what was happening underneath. They saw delay. They did not see calculation. They saw quiet. They did not see overload. They saw questions. They did not see the need for coherence. They saw distance. They did not see a mind trying to stay regulated in a room full of noise. That is why normal life can feel so heavy for high IQ people. Not because you are broken, not because you are too fragile for ordinary things, but because normal life often rewards what is visible, fast, agreeable, and easy to read. And sometimes your mind is none of those things. It is slower to respond because it is processing. It is harder to satisfy because it is looking for accuracy. It is harder to place because it does not fit cleanly into polite scripts. They judge the behavior because they could not see the processing. They named your traits from the outside but never understood the function from the inside. So the answer is not to make your mind smaller. It is to understand what it has been carrying, and maybe, slowly, to learn how to translate it without betraying it. Because high IQ is not a trophy. It does not make you right all the time. It does not excuse arrogance. It does not remove the responsibility to communicate kindly, listen carefully, and admit when you are wrong. But it may explain why normal life has felt heavier than it seemed to feel for everyone else. Too much noise, too little depth, too many rules no one wants to question, too many signals in rooms where people pretend nothing is happening, too much pressure to respond before your mind has finished processing. And if this is you, the goal is not to become less intelligent. It is not to become colder, quieter, more distant, or more isolated. And it is not to shrink your mind until it becomes easier for everyone else to handle. The goal is to understand it, to protect it, to translate it, to place it in rooms where it can breathe. Because maybe normal life felt hard because your mind was doing invisible work in a world that only judged what it could see. And maybe the problem was never that you were too much. Maybe some parts of you were simply never translated properly. It was not always a flaw. Sometimes it was a translation problem. If this gave language to something you have felt for years, leave just one word below: noise, depth, questions, calm, or space. And if you want more psychology that helps you understand yourself without shame, subscribe to Psyche-Life, not to feel superior, but to know yourself more honestly.